Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto, Willies. Folks, we are going to have a great program for you today. Remember, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. We got started with Jack talking about minimum wage. And you know what? If there is something that should be upsetting for us all, it is the minimum wage. I want you to think logically here for a second. What is the reason for establishing a minimum wage? Establishing a minimum wage creates a floor. It shouldn't even be called a minimum wage. It should be called a living wage. And the reason why is if you have a society, if things have particular costs, you have to sit down and say, what is the minimum cost? What is the minimum somebody has to earn working what we've considered in a society a workable time, whether that be a 40-hour week or whatever it would be? What's that time? And we've established that 40 hours a week gives people a chance to work and balance the time with your families, etc. That's what we've said. Now, if you set the minimum wage to $7.25, as Jack pointed out 19 years ago, and then followingly, inflation goes up within that period by 100%. But in reality, it's more than that. But let's say inflation goes up by 100%, the cumulative inflation. How can you say that a minimum wage of $7.25 is sufficient for someone to live on? And all the excuses they give, well, the minimum wage is just for people starting. That's not true. The minimum wage is not what most people get. Well, you know what? When people get second and third jobs, a lot of times that is all they get, folks. Many times that is all they get. Now, you may say, oh, it puts an expense on the business person. Well, if a business person cannot pay for a bit, let me personalize this a bit. I have a business now. Well, I've always had a business. And one of the reasons I haven't had employees is because based on how our system works, unless you when you get a job, one would expect that the job would give you health insurance. It will give you vacation time. It'll give you all these things. And also it should give you more than a living wage, a wage that's respectable. My former business was serial communication software development. I would have had in my budget to add another $150,000 to have the type of employee that I wanted to have, because again, I will not be making X amount of dollars and using the services of somebody else just to make a dollar or increase my profitability and not pay commensurate with what that person is worth. So therefore, instead of hiring somebody else, I just busted my butt more, because if you don't do that, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. Now look, if we had a real society that cared about people, where health insurance was taken care of by the government, as every sensible country does, where all these policies, healthcare, family leave, and all of that was handled by we, the people, as a government, where the big corporations that exploit our oil, exploit our carbon, exploit all these things would pay their fair share to ensure we can have small businesses, large businesses, and otherwise. Then somebody like myself or the candlestick maker or the baker or whatever could hire more people, could give people more than a living wage, and give people the dignity of working, because society in the aggregate made sure that we were a fair society where somebody like Elon Musk could not accumulate $400 billion on our backs. So somebody like Jeff Bezos cannot get a piece of the action of everybody. By the way, yes, I sell my books on Amazon. And you know what? Amazon get a huge piece of what's sold. For doing what? In other words, Amazon has used my intellect to make a profit over and over and over again. That is monies denied to the little guy who I could have said hired to do copy editing, who I could have said hired to do graphics. Instead, I did it all myself, denied other people employment because we have rich people like Jeff Bezos in a capitalist society that takes all of the spoils that could otherwise have gone to those who are worthy. A copy editor, a graphic designer, those things that there would have been money to pay. But the billionaire class, because they own capital, because they own the means of distribution of the information, because they own all of that, they set the rules. And guess what? On that stage, on January 20th, when Donald Trump takes possession of the United States, they will be top and center on that stage with El Señor Trump. That is what we have decided as a society. That is what needs heavy mitigation. Anyway, folks, I see that we have people on the line right now. Let's go ahead and start with Brother Harry, who has been the first caller since our magical fiasco. Come on in, Jack. Come on in, Harry. Harry?
Hello, good morning, Egberto, Willies. Good morning, Howard Reynolds, and good morning, Magic Jack. Yes, I love Richard Elliott and In the Groove. That was that piece. But anyway, let me go on to what I was going to talk about. I'll start off with Arnie Arneson. I listened to her whole hour show. She talked a little bit about what you're talking about before she started talking about the Christian and for that first half hour of resegregating the schools. That poem, I recommend that everybody listen to Arnie Arneson's show today because she talks about how the oligarch is coming in Monday and going to rip off people, as Egberto was just speaking there, rip off the aggregate, that copywriter and the other professor you mentioned. The little guy, like Egberto was saying, needs to be paid a livable wage. Bernie Sanders is always talking about that. A show I listened to on NPR last year when they were talking about debt and deficit, and they talked about it in the 1980s when Reagan was president, and the farmers were talking about, we can't survive on 725. People who lived through that remember that, and they also remember when Ronald Reagan was telling those people in the early 80s that worked at the airport, get back to work because they wanted livable wages. They didn't want to work for these peanuts or these peons that these peon wages that Egberto's always talking about. How the Bezoses and the Zuckerbergs and the the Elon Musks rip people off. That's what they do. They rip off the aggregate. They don't care about the working poor. And I just love how Howard Reynolds put it yesterday about Brian, and you, Egberto, when Brian gets on there and lies, he doesn't always lie, but a lot of times he gets on there and lies. And unfortunately, Egberto, because he disrespects you, and because you are a black man that have been successful with your software company, there are people who are non-black in this society, unfortunately, who can't handle that. I was just listening to Brian yesterday on the show Conversations with Michael Woodson, and they were talking about homeless. Now, he talks to Michael civilly. Why can't he talk to you civilly like that? Why does he always have to do it? I got you, and I attack you, and I always commend Johnny, especially, who calls him on that. Two more callers I didn't mention yesterday, Betty and Ray. Very intelligent callers on this show and always have something intelligent to say.
Brother Harry, thank you very much. Need to go to the other calls, but I thanks for the kudos, my brother, and you have a wonderful, great day. Salute your brother for me,
Guys, have
okay?
a good weekend. I'll listen to the rest of it, and we'll talk about it.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to Brother Bruce. Come on in, Bruce.
Good morning, Egberto. I got two things. First, I think the minimum wage should be reviewed yearly, tied to inflation, just like they do with Social Security.
Amen.
Number two, I watched Bondi's testimony and it reminded me very much. Her artful dodging reminded me of Barrett and the frat boy when they were dodging the Roe versus Wade by saying things like, "We believe in past presidents, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera." They immediately turned around and did what they did. I need your expertise to educate me on this. Should Patel and Bondi get confirmed? How do you see it playing out? What are we going to see first, and how are they going to do it? How are they going to implement it? Thank you.
Okay, my brother, I think they are going to get, they're both going to get, they'll get through the Senate. They'll be confirmed. Neither one of them are qualified. Patel is simply not qualified to leave the FBI. Bondi is qualified to be Attorney General. I think she's a very, very smart woman. And I think that hearing proves that she's very smart. The problem is being smart is not enough. Being ethical is what's important. Being moral is what's important. And anybody who continues with the inability to point out that we had an election that Donald Trump lost in a landslide. Donald Trump lost 2020 in a landslide. Donald Trump lost 2016, but because of the constitutional aberration, he won the the electoral college. Okay, he is president, and we accept that. The left went ahead and didn't riot and throw feces in the Congress, in the halls of Congress or anything. We hated it in 2016, but you know what? We didn't go to war. We didn't attempt to overthrow the government. We didn't demean our government or anything of that sort, as the right did in 2020, when they not only lost the election, they lost the election in a landslide. This election here, likewise, is going to be peaceful in Washington, D.C., because as upset as the left is that a person, again, less than 50% of the vote is going to be president again. Less than 50% of the vote, because of an electoral anachronism, makes it look like, hey, he won by over 40 electoral college votes. Or again, he is the president. He was elected president. He got the popular vote. But one of the things that we will hold the rest of the Americans accountable is those didn't vote, and those who vote from a racial and sexist perspective. What's going to happen to America and the amount of work activists are going to do to attenuate what's happening in America. My dear brothers and sisters, and I say it with love, but it's on your back. We've told you what was in store. And with the billionaires on stage, with the billionaires controlling our airwaves, whether it's be TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, I don't know. I stream everywhere. I get throttled everywhere, which means they control how many people actually see the stuff that we throw out there on the internet. It's going to get worse, because now, if you say anything about this administration, AI will be picking up keywords and the permutation of keywords to make sure that traction doesn't occur. When you have Facebook not monitoring, when I stream to Facebook, that stream goes through AI. AI is going to be looking for certain phraseologies and it'll throttle it. When it goes through YouTube, YouTube would be looking to some types of phraseology and it goes out. Folks, I'm talking now from a technological standpoint. You don't understand. You don't understand. We, the billionaires with the control of the internet, how I start the program all of the times, they have ensured that where people get most of their communication, they control. 4 guys control the vast means of communication that from Gen Z's all the way up use. And they have the ability, using technologies like AI, to determine what type of communication will flow through their systems. So they are going to be shaping the minds of many if we don't take command and find alternate forms of communication, as Neil Aquino was talking about yesterday. You don't know what's in store. We are trying to fight it. I'm trying to build mailing lists. I'm trying to build all kinds of alternate ways of communication so that when people go to their churches and receive my email, they can promote certain policies in churches now. I don't have to reach everybody in that church. If I reach 10 people in that church, they can be voice communicators of what we need to do when they go to their lodge meetings, etc. But we are in for a lot, folks. Thank you, Bruce, for your comment. Or anything else that you need to say?
Yes, very fast. I saw Lawrence O'Donnell's interview with President Trump, and I saw soft-spoken brilliance. Any comments on that? And I'm getting off the air now.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm glad that you brought that up. What that proved, right now the Congress is about to open up an investigation as to whether folks know that that Joe Biden was in a debilitative state of memory. I mean, of mental. He was in a debilitative mental state, and whether there was a cover up about Brother Biden. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Brother Biden's mind. Look, I don't agree with Biden on a lot of things. But the one thing I agree of is that the guy is sharp. The guy knows policy. It's the only person that I've gotten a bipartisan infrastructure bill out. It's the only person that I've really pushed because of pressure from the progressive side, but push progressive policies and not just talk about it, but get it effected. And again, he's a neoliberal. But you know what? He served us well. We need somebody to serve us better. But he served us well. The guy is brilliant. I think he had a genocidal policy in the Middle East. But let me tell you something. I understand the difference between the president and the presidency. And I think when a lot of us are able to understand that, we'll realize that to change the presidency, it's not enough to just change the president. We have to change the way we think. We have to change our humanity. We have to change what we think about others. We have to bring in a hell of a lot of love. Even though that may sound corny, but my brothers and sisters, that is essential. Let's go to Brother Patrick.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
It's rare, but I'm going to disagree about Biden. There's either something wrong with his mind or his heart. Otherwise, Gaza would have never happened.
Let me stop you right there. I don't think we disagree there at all, sir. I mean, Patrick, I love your mind because, I get your emails with the top stuff. I don't think we disagree. Biden is an old guy where even folks like me didn't have full humanity. And I still think the way he's been all his life, he still is. So I think we agree, but I compartmentalize Biden. Continue, my brother.
Understood. Today, during the interruption in the beginning, minimum wage was brought up, and then also taxation on the 3 o'clock program was brought up yesterday. And I want to tell you that I didn't agree with that guy on a lot of things that you did the interview on, but it was a fantastic interview because it was one of the few that I saw two points of view in respect from both sides, and he was fairly articulate. I could see his point of view. I didn't agree with it, but it was delivered respectfully, and it's much easier to listen to somebody like that than it is for somebody that's going to call up and time how long they think that it takes for you to interrupt them or something like that. So people that are missing that 3 o'clock program, I suggest trying to catch it from time to time.
Patrick, you don't know what it means to me for you to say that, because that is the kind of discourse that I want us to have. There are certain things that are black and white, certain things that are wrong or right, certain things that are just, I would prefer it this way, you prefer it that way, and we live with the consequences of our preferences. but the type of the discussion that we have too often on the right specifically, sometimes, rarely, but sometimes on the left as well, it doesn't lend itself to sit down and come out with resolutions that we can all say, you know what, I don't agree 100%, but I know in your heart, you really believe things that way. And in my heart, I believe it this way. So that you, from your point of view, got that out of the discussion, it means a lot. Continue, sir.
Okay. We were asking about taxation on the top 10% and then the bottom 80, and then somebody in the chat brought up that the bottom half don't pay taxes at all.
Yeah, 50%. That was Lee Grant. Yeah.
Okay. If he's on, then I won't call back in tonight about it. But we need to understand a few things. I don't think that any of those people want to be in a position where they can't afford to not pay taxes. They would much rather have a living wage of $23 an hour and pay their due. And if they were paying their due, then so would the corporations. The corporations are the ones that are pulling, that are really doing a shell game with us. They're underpaying by magnitude of about 3 the most impoverished in this country, so they can't afford to participate in the economy as a consumer, only as a producer. Then they're not rewarded as a producer. Then they can't afford to pay for their basic needs. That's the whole concept of the poverty line.
Exactly. You nailed it. You nailed it.
So you nailed it. We adjusted that to about, I would say, north of $75,000 for 2 kids and in a family. And I mean, there's still paycheck to paycheck. They're still going to be scraping by, but they could afford to pay the taxes, and then we would have more revenue if everybody had a fair wage. And I'm including the people that are making $10 million or more a year. That's not a fair wage either. It goes both ways. And
exactly,
all the spectrums aren't. You could argue aren't paying their dues, but the labor class is, because they are putting into the economy. They are putting up houses. They're repairing your roofs. They are doing things like that. A roofer in Houston, I believe, makes $35,000 to $40,000 a year. One of the most dangerous jobs there are on this planet.
Right.
And they can't afford basics.
Yeah.
So let's get people to where they can afford all these basics, and then we can talk about taxing them. But they'll gladly do it. $7.50 or whatever it is now. I can't buy a burrito for that now.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Buy a burrito?
Patrick, got to go to the other caller, but let me tell you, you nailed it. And again, I appreciate you. When I got that, and by the way, the person that Patrick is talking about is the former Republican, the chair of the Florida Republican Party that I had on yesterday. And we had a very good conversation. We agreed on a few things. We disagreed on a lot, but this guy had the right heart, as Patrick was talking about. And I don't know if you heard the point where he actually said, you gave me some things that I'm going to have to reevaluate now. And when I hear things like that, that's when I talk about somebody who can think critically. Offline, we spoke quite a bit longer than that, and the conversation was a very positive conversation. Thank you so kindly for calling in, Patrick. And let's go to Roberto. Roberto, you're on.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
So I was calling because you had mentioned some components about minimum wage. And so essentially we're talking about capitalism and motivation of the, working class. And capitalism is what's being touted as the main method for people wanting to improve themselves. And so I guess what I was really calling about is with the minimum wage and being different than a living wage, how do we ensure an economy or a society that encourages people to want more or do better? I think it's probably difficult to achieve that type of goal when somebody's poor because they're trying to survive. They're not able to turn on their brain to go into a opportunity finding mode. They're trying to just survive. And so there is that disconnect. But what is a way that without increasing maybe taxes too much or causing a redistribution of wealth, which would in some people's eyes be deemed communism, how do you motivate or keep that sense of motivation to strive for more or be better? Because that's kind of like what we're up against. If there's a model or a method that we could come up with, I think there would be opportunity to make it better.
You know what? I first of all, what's interesting is, can I ask you what you do for a living?
Oh, God, I don't want to say it publicly, but sure, why not? I work for the government.
Okay, and let me. Why don't you want to say that publicly?
Because people don't want to hear how a person in government thinks.
Okay, let me tell you something. Let me interrupt you. I'm sorry. I want to give you kudos. Okay, no, you get up every morning and you go to work. There's nothing different between a government job and a private sector job. The only thing different between those two jobs is, in general, the government treats you better. There's nothing, and guess what? You deserve to be treated correctly. You deserve, as a human being, to be treated correctly. Go ahead.
Well, so I was going to say, you're definitely echoing something that I've determined, which is why I continue to work for the government, which is they do ensure equity amongst the employees and amongst yourself. Like as an employee, you have equity with your employer as far as time management. It's like think overtime specifically.
Okay, let me manage time with you right now, sir. Bear with me. I need to manage a little bit of time with you. No, but let me just say this. The idea, the private sector had to indoctrinate Americans into believing that a private sector job is different than a public sector job. If you're a government doctor at some organization, you are no less or better or worse than, in general, a private sector doctor. In fact, many of our military doctors, which are government workers, are the best ones because in combat, they've seen so much. I don't know about you, Brother Roberto, but nobody had to tell me to invent a serial communication software to make a lot of money. I intrinsically am a curious person, and I loved programming. I loved doing engineering before I went activist full time. I love it. It wasn't about money. It was about doing things. Most of the people who create things, they're not looking to create things to make $1. They're looking to create things because that is how their minds work. I love creating things. You love doing what you do. Okay. So therefore, what the capitalists do already, they know capitalism. So they find a way to monetize excessively your work and worth. And monetizing your work and worth is what gives them the billions. They don't create anything. They leverage everything that you do. And the mindset of Americans, and it was yours as well, my brother, because when you listen to some of the things you said, how do we incentivize those people if we don't kind of hold back on money and let them think I can make more money if I better myself? What does better myself mean? Some people want to be just mothers. Some people just want to be farmers. Some people just want to be these different things. Neither is better than the other. We need them all. So there is this thinking that we have allowed the capitalists to indoctrinate into us called bettering oneself. And I thought like that as well. There's a certain chip on your shoulder you get with bettering. People would naturally want to do what they want to do, and that's engineers, doctors, lawyers, and all of that before they think about the money. My daughter went to med school, and she said there were two kinds of folks in med school. Those who were there because they just love healing people, which she was one. She likes taking care of people. But then there were the others that just say, hey, if I specialize in this, I'll be able to get me the mansion, this. There are two kinds of people, right? The capitalists and the rest. And what I'm saying is, first of all, never, ever I think you ought to always be proud to say, damn it, I work for the government. I work for you, and I do a good job at it. It's no better than that person who is working in the private sector. But anyway, I got to go, Roberto. Anything real quick to finish before I go to Bard?
No problem. Bye.
Thank you, brother. Peace. Let's go to Bard. Come on in, Bard.
Good morning, Egberto. I am so happy that we only have 3 more days of this utter and complete failure of a president. And on Monday, we will be going to inaugurate President Trump for the second time. Now, my company has had the foresight and wherewithal to give us Monday off so that we can watch the inauguration all day. So I have a holiday on Monday to watch the inauguration. I'm very excited. But I'm going to stick to the topic. And this last caller is right. I just passed a Houston Garden Center. They have a now hiring sign, $12.50 an hour. You don't have to work at McDonald's. You can go work at Houston Garden Center, and you'll be making $5 an hour more than anyone else. And what this guy was saying was, get off of welfare. The government is not coming to save you. You got to go get it yourself. You're not meant to work at McDonald's your whole life. It's a starter job. You start there for $7.50 and you work your way up. You get out of there. You learn some skills. You keep going up and up and up and up. If you sit around on welfare or you cross the border and you get a gift card and a phone, it's not going to happen.
All right, let me tell you, Bard.
And,
what? Okay, stop. Okay, stop. No, stop now. Stop now. You stop, Bard. Okay, my show. Remember, I'll let you talk. First of all, you've proven that you have been very well indoctrinated into the concept of thinking that the 725 is a starter job. And it doesn't take simple math to realize that everybody's not going to get that other job you're talking about. And even $12.50 an hour is not a working wage at all. It's not a living wage at all. We should be paying, as Patrick points out, a living wage right now is $23 an hour. If you cannot afford to pay that, what you have is not a business, but you have a hobby. Now, let's go ahead now and speak about welfare, etc. There is, in fact, a small subset of America who have now adopted a welfare culture because of education and otherwise, and not having civics taught in school. We can go up into Appalachia and see that where 50% in some communities, 50% of the people are on government assistance. And the reason I brought up Appalachia is because, as Reverend Barber has pointed out, people like to equate poverty with people of color when the majority of the poverty occurs in Appalachia and other places like that in rural areas where it mostly look like what I imagine you look like, my dear brother. So I just want to get those kinds of notions out there. And the thing about welfare and who's on welfare, by the way, our Black, white, Latino, and everybody in between, brothers and sisters on welfare, it pales in comparison to the welfare that the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos and the Bill Gates and all of them get from government. So but again, you have been well indoctrinated into believing what you believe about who and how people get ahead and people get better. So thank you so kindly. Let's move on to Betty. Come on in, Betty.
Hold on.
Anyway, Bart, he's getting a day off Monday. It's because of MLK Day. It's not because of his boss, I'm sure. But Monday's my birthday, and I'm not going to celebrate it because of Trump. I will MLK Day. They talk about, Joe, he had a speech problem, and that has a little bit to do with your mind. Everything has to come out the truth, and that's the way it's always been with him. He speaks out the truth. And he didn't want to run the first time when Hillary run. He had to, and he didn't want to run last year, 4 years ago, because of Trump. And, some people don't see how how he is a man and stud, how he stood up to so many things because of his speech problem. And he is a man, stud, and I would pay for stud service any day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so kind. I love you, Betty. Anyway, before I move on, I want to point out that in the chat we have our beautiful Joe from LA. Joe, I imagine that the fire is still staying away from you. We also have Glenn Ryan. Glenn Ryan, thank you so kindly for being here. Eric Hayes as well in the house. And Billy Allison Irwin is in the house. Just Tone is in the chat as well. And Just Tone says, welfare supports business owners who only pay their workers $15 an hour. Medicare supports business owners who do not provide health insurance. So again, I want to thank you, Just Tone, for saying that, because what you have done is show that you can critically think. Critically thinking, meaning that you understand that the reason so often these businesses can pay low wages and thus enhance their profit is because then we, the people, for those people making those wages, support them with our tax dollars. Also, I want to address Glenn Ryan. Glenn Ryan and I think have the same type of ideological thinking, except I think he holds me accountable for not holding President Biden sufficiently accountable for the genocide occurring in Gaza. And I accept that attack, Glenn. I do. But I continue to maintain that I, as a host, have to have a certain amount of pragmatism. You don't have to. And you can knock me on that, and I'll accept the knock. But I compartmentalize all the very good things Biden did, and I took the knock from both you and Patrick for compartmentalizing the carnage in Gaza. Hit me for it, brothers. Hit me for it. NYU professor Scott Galloway appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe. And I tell you, he had one of the best narratives on what's occurring right now with our economic system, with our oligarchy, with what capitalism is doing to the working class. Now, this guy is, Scott Galloway is a New York University professor. And again, based on the way he speaks and what he does, it's clear that he still believes in the capitalist system and the way it works, but he wants some framing to have better distribution of what the economic system creates. Unfortunately, what many like the professor and others who have been indoctrinated in the system fail to realize is the controls that they want to put on capitalism within our economic system makes it no longer capitalism. I believe strongly in democracy, and I believe strongly in free enterprise. The problem that we will never solve until we are honest about economic systems is that we have a predatory economic system, a system that by definition says your first goal is to reward, is to satisfy your shareholders. That is their ultimate goal. That is not what I am saying. That is what the God, or I should call him the new God of capitalism, says, which is Milton Friedman. Read his 1970-something paper. You can find it on Wikipedia. Capitalism doesn't care about environment. Capitalism doesn't care about any of these things. You have to write laws that allows the existence of humanity, the existence of caring for others, the existence of preventing monopolies, etc. Because by definition, if your sole goal of a particular company is to maximize the profits for a particular corporation, then by default, it turns not into competition, but into monopoly, because you will do at all costs what's necessary to maximize income. This is a reality that nobody wants to be honest about. And in effect, that's what we see in our economic system. The only answer is true free enterprise with a strong social safety net, with us taking all the essentials out of the for-profit systems, meaning life, for your life, your health care, that doesn't belong in the private system. Just like firemen, policemen, police persons, none of that belongs in the private sector. We've got pieces of it done, but we need to finally rearrange our economy to have real free enterprise and to have people really asserting their worth and being paid their worth. The billionaires that we have out there are parasites taking advantage of you. Unfortunately, even Scott Galloway doesn't have the gumption to say it. But I want you to listen to what he said, starting with the capitulation of Mark Zuckerberg to Donald Trump by turning Facebook into a cesspool like Twitter. Listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
What is so shocking, I mean, just from a personal standpoint, what's the point of having all this money if you aren't at some point going to show some fidelity as a 40 or a 50-something-year-old man that has the wealth of the GDP of a Latin American nation to actually standing up and showing some fidelity to American values? Bezos has got the yacht. Tim Cook, Jensen Huang at NVIDIA is worth more than Intel or Boeing. At what point? When do the men show up here? When do the Americans show up here? Where are the men that have such blessings and such prosperity from the rule of law and capitalism and competition? And we don't need more mergers and acquisitions. We need more breakups. One company owns 2/3 of all social media globally. Meta, one company has 93% of all share of all search. Google, and if you don't think every day we don't pay higher prices, one company has 50% of all e-commerce. Amazon, the percentage of revenues that have gone to Amazon from third-party retailers has gone up from 24 to 50%. Look at the rents that parents are paying on Facebook when 24% of teen girls are now addicted to Facebook. 6% of our teenagers are clinically addicted to drugs and alcohol. 24% are addicted to Instagram. And the number of teen girls self-harming has doubled. So if you want higher rents as a consumer, as a retailer, and as a parent, that's where we're headed.
What does that say about where American capitalism is going over the next 5-10 years?
I think it comes down to a basic question. What is America? And my kind of economic role model is Peter Drucker. I think an economy in America exists to create a robust middle class. The most ascending countries over the last 20 years have been China and India. And it's one basic litmus test. How many people are you bringing into the middle class? The greatest innovation in history is not the iPhone or the semiconductor. It's the American middle class that beat back fascism in the middle of World War II, has financed and built the greatest innovations, whether it's radar, whether it's the internet, whether it's vaccines. The middle class in America is the greatest innovation in history. And people like to fall back into this right-wing notion that it's naturally self-healing. It's not. It's an accident in history. Typically throughout history, you have a small number of people who weaponize government. They're very talented. They aggregate power. They weaponize government, and they aggregate more and more spoils. And then the good news is it's self-correcting. This level of income inequality is usually self-correcting. The bad news is the means of self-correction are typically war, famine, or revolution. And if you want to talk about tax policy, the myth in tax policy is that the rich don't pay their taxes. That's just not true. The fulcrum is the following. There's super super earners and super owners. The folks around your table are probably considered super earners. You make exceptional livings, but it's all current income reported on a W-2. And if you live in New Jersey or New York, you're probably paying 48 to 52% tax rates.
Right.
But if you're a super owner, I make my living starting and selling businesses. My last business, which was sold for $160 million, the first $10 million from my $160 million sale was tax-free. My effective tax rate over the last 10 years has been 17%. The average tax rate on the wealthiest 25 Americans is 6%. Corporate tax rates are at their lowest point since 1939. At the same time, taxes have gone up for the super owners. Now, the bottom 50% don't pay much federal income tax, but they pay a lot in usage and consumption taxes. But this misdirect talking about tax rates misses the point. It's the tax code, which has gone from 400 pages to 4,000. And that 3,600 pages, quite frankly, is there to screw the middle class and continue to transfer more money to the super wealthy. The fastest growing demographic group in America is not seniors. It's not Latins. It's billionaires. We had 500 billionaires 10 years ago. We now have 2,500. So if you want to cram more and more wealth into a smaller group of people, we're on our way. And the weird thing about America is that we support it because our superpower is our optimism. The Achilles heel is that 99%, the bottom 99% who are getting screwed, don't mind these policies because they believe at some point they're going to be in that 1%. But where are we? We're in a country that's had unprecedented prosperity. It has not been evenly distributed. When 40% of U.S. households are struggling with some sort of medical or dental debt, when a quarter or 20% of households with kids are food insecure, and yet we have one man, Jensen Huang, who is now worth more than Boeing. I mean, something is wrong here. And just let me go to the psychology of happiness. You effectively, once you get above a certain level of wealth, you get no incremental happiness. So why on earth would you not go back to a tax policy of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where say above, pick a big number, 10 million, you actually pay more than 10%, maybe more than 20%, maybe more than 50%, because the difference between 30,000 a year for a household and 50,000 is enormous to the well-being of that household. Low-income kids in low-income households have higher resting blood pressure. But the difference between making 10 million a year and 15 million a year offers you no happiness. But these individuals have weaponized government, and we risk revolution, whether it's CEOs being murdered in the street, whether it's a Me Too movement that had righteous components of it, or Black Lives Matter. What are these movements? They are targeting the wealthy. We are in the midst of a series of small revolutions to correct income inequality. And the reason we put an insurrectionist and a rapist in office is because for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. Why? Because the majority of households are having the oxygen sucked out of the room, such that a small number of individuals and a small number of companies can be worth more than nation states. Income inequality is out of control. Our tax policy has gone full oligarch.
Galloway's correct. And one of the things that we are doing here at Politics Done Right and other people that are trying to make Americans aware of what's going on is, yes, we need to get the right people elected. We need to inform people in such a manner that they feel they have agency in getting folks elected and doing what they're supposed to do. Because otherwise, listen to the last sentence that he has. If we are unsuccessful in educating, having people vote their interests and not the lies of the Trumps, etc., they're just ripping them off once again. If we don't get the work done, he's right. What you saw Mangione do would simply be the tip of the iceberg. I hate to say that. It's not something any of us want, but when people are pushed against the wall and enough are pushed around against the wall, people will start reacting. Scott Galloway is absolutely correct. Johnny, come on in.
So I couldn't help it when I heard Breitbart, I think it was, he made a snide remark about people coming into this country. You cross the border, you get what did he say? They give
a
you
phone and a gift card. Yeah.
a gift card on a cell phone, and you're not going to make it that way. First of all, when I worked at a different job in the building where they processed intake for people getting food stamps and stuff, a lot of the future Asian Americans, they would give them just that and some more, and they didn't make them go through hoops every few weeks in order to get care, to get kind of assistance while they settled in. And these are the people that have a reputation for being achievers, goal setters, right? And I don't know of many people in the Asian American community, although you do hear reports of, the first and second generations, some of whom kind of have a dropout mentality because they're humans. That's human nature. But for him to be so dismissive and smug and all the things that come with that is laughable. And then he has to say, 4 years of the most failed president. Listen, you know that I'm not a fan of centrist Democrats, but I would never characterize Joe Biden's presidency in a negative way that he did. He just likes to say what he says, and he's not here to learn. He's here to antagonize.
Exactly.
Right? He's to antagonize.
Look, let me just say this. He's here to antagonize. He's not here to learn, and he cannot. Let me tell you, there are some people that the way they're wired, and I mean this with a lot of respect, brother, but they cannot learn. I have a couple in the chat as well that I just use some of their commentary to expand on because other people hear it and I get a chance to respond. But I understand that there are some people that are completely immutable. I have no problem with it because the majority of Americans want good stuff and would like to learn how to think critically. And by the way, before you continue, GCW, thank you for that smart commentary. GCW says, let's keep bailing out the banks and corporations on our tax dollars while they buy back their stocks. When we bail out banks, our taxes go up. We bail out the corporations and they buy back their stocks. It's this let me tell you first, folks, you're absolutely correct. And that's why we try to enlighten folks here. Finish up for me, Johnny, so I can get to Brian.
Okay, the next time I talk to you, hopefully, I'll be able to call in earlier. I'm going to channel the character from the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas, I think it was, back in the early 1990s, this film about a fired, not a software engineer, but an engineer in the defense industry. You remember that movie?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a scene where that guy goes into an Army-Navy surplus store and he interacts with the owner. I'm going to channel that guy the next time I speak to you. Have a good day.
Thank you, my brother. All right, let's go to Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Good morning. I hope everyone has a good weekend.
I hope you too, my friend.
Yeah. We've got about 3 days, and we will get rid of a dementia patient. Everybody says, he stutters. That's not true. Listen to him from 4, 5, 7 years, even 25 years ago. He doesn't stutter. He has dementia. Did you hear his farewell speech to the United States? It was nothing but division, hatred of people that didn't vote for him. Did you pick up on that?
Actually, I didn't. I didn't pick up on that. I pick up on the complete opposite. That actually shows me how people look at things through colored glasses. If you listen to his full, almost 1 hour interview with Lawrence O'Donnell, you see somebody, and Lawrence said, I am going to do this interview uncut so that people can't say I cut or I changed or I made him look good. And the guy, first of all, you're correct that he doesn't speak like he did before. Man, the guy's 81 years old. I don't speak like I used to before. I was a hothead back in college when I was a real guy marching for. I mean, you change. If I play a video of you from 10 or 20 years ago, you will be different. Do not judge this guy on a different standard, which you are, Brian. Wrap her up for me, Brian.
You're not neutral in your thinking, are you? And
no,
you can
I'm not.
To me.
No, wait. You're right. Oh, okay, hold on. I accept that. I am not neutral. I am a lefty, and I look at things through the left prism. You're right. Continue.
If you can find it, you can go back to Glenn Urbach, me calling him. And I am the exact same way calling him as I am today. I don't change.
But here's the problem, Brian, here's the problem. You don't critically think, sir. With all due respect, you You do not think, Brian, I can tell you that 1 + 1 is 2. And Trump can tell you otherwise, and you will completely disregard it. But we are up on time, sir.
Correct.
Go ahead. Give me a closing statement real quick, Brian.
No, I have my own critical thinking.
Okay.
If you tell me something is 2 + 2, yes, then it is. All right? Don't put words in my mouth again.
Again, you don't critically think, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. Harry, you got 30 seconds. Oh, he left. I guess he left. Anyway, Harry, you're going to get 30 seconds. It's too late right now because I'm passing, before I give my last soliloquy, I'm passing it to the guys who saved my butt this morning, Howard Reynolds and Jack Van Beber.
Well, if we have an inauguration, and we will, we trade one dementia for another. I'm not saying Joe Biden is demented. I mean, I'm not a Biden fan, okay? I'll admit that. I'm not a Biden fan, but he did quite well with what he had to deal with coming into office, all the chaos and the mess that he had to clean up, and the COVID, and et cetera. He did a decent job on it. I mean, what president could do a really good job when you're left with, a trash heap?
Can I interrupt you a second? I want to interrupt you, sir, because you are so right. But I want us to do something better than that, because we are always answering folks who say Biden was a bad president, and then so we are always on the defensive. I think we need, and I need to learn this myself. I need to learn this, how to be simply on the offensive, disregard the crap, and just come out and say, man, it was great that we got the CHIPS Act. No other president brought back chip manufacturing to the United States. And it is great that most of the dollars Republicans voted against in the infrastructure bill, in the CHIPS bill, in the emergency bill, most of those dollars went to red states. We need to come out and say all these things and disregard the crap coming from these folks, because Biden was asked that, and he said, why is it that you sent most of the money from all these bills to red state? And he said, we had to, because they are so badly mismanaged. They're the ones that need the most. Think about that, folks.
Agreed.
All right. Anyway, folks, here's the deal. We'll talk to you on Monday. I love you all. I thank you all for listening. Please remember to share. Politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Politicsdoneright.com/newsletter is the rest of the program. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willies.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is